The regular season has come to an end, and it is time for the end of regular season update, plus the playoff review, plus the offseason, so let's hop straight into it. First thing we do is go over the standings, and throughout the league, we'll start things off in the National League East. The Phillies won that division with only 89 wins. The Nationals were 4 games behind them. And the Braves, who we of course sent Carlos Gonzalez to, struggled mightily. In the second half, they were 12 games back, finished the year at 77 and 85. In the National League Central, it was predictably a slaughterhouse of a division. The Pirates won it with 94 wins. Just behind them were the Chicago Cubs with 93, and then the Cardinals were the second wildcard team, 5 games back with 89 wins. Even the Brewers and the Reds won at least 80 games, just an absolutely super tough division to play in. And then in the National League West, you had the Dodgers easily winning the division as the best team in the National League with 101 wins. We were actually in second place because the rest of the NL West was pretty garbage this year. And like I said, for the wild card, the Cubs and the Cardinals were the wild card teams. They had a pretty good grasp on the wild card. The other teams weren't very close to them. And taking a look at the American League, you have the Yankees, who won 102 games and won the AL East, and then right behind them, a game behind, were the Red Sox, winning 101 games as the top wildcard team. And then the Rays, of course, being the third wildcard team because the AL East is just so overpowered in this game. They won 95 games and were in third place in the AL East. The Jays predictably stunk, but the Orioles, the Orioles were beyond bad. I mean, look at this. They won 39 games. They were 39 and 123, 63 games behind first place. They basically fielded a double-A team. I mean, they were really, really bad. That's the worst record I've ever seen in MLB The Show. I haven't ever seen anything close to that, I don't think. And then in the Central, I know it's a shocker, Cleveland won the division with a Major League Baseball best 108 wins, a very good year for Cleveland. Twins still won 91 games, but they were 17 games back because Cleveland was so good. And then in the West, the Seattle Mariners actually made a late season push and won the division. The A's just barely missed out on the playoffs by 2 games. And the Astros somehow had a bad year. I don't know how they were under 500. They were 80 and 82, 4th in the American League West as the Angels were 3rd. And then, of course, like I said, the wild card, it was just the AL East. I mean, everybody else had no chance because the AL East is just so damn good. And now that we've gone over the standings, you take a look at what the playoff bracket looks like. We'll talk more about how it actually shaped up once we go over the Giants' player stats, as well as some other things around the league. But hopping into the player stats on the hitting side of things, Tetsuto Yamada was the best bat on the San Francisco Giants this year with an 886 OPS. He had 20 home runs and 18 steals. He was among the league leaders in the National League with doubles as well, with 36 of those bad boys. We've got him for 3 more seasons, so he's on an incredibly cheap deal, and then he has 1 more year of team control. So Tetsuto Yamada is going to be a big part of this team for multiple seasons to come. Ryan Schimpf, yet another solid year for our slugger, an 862 OPS. He played mainly against right-handed pitching last season, so he had a lot more ABs on both sides this year because he played against righties and lefties rather than letting Longoria play against lefties. And he yet again hit 32 home runs, the exact same he had last season. And if you don't remember, we signed him to a 1-year extension at the trade deadline, so he is back for another year in 2021. Robbie Grossman had a pretty decent year, 783 OPS. He was hurt for like the first month and a half to 2 months of the season, but he still put up good numbers, still played good plate discipline. Garcia was a guy who was raking when he was only the utility guy and playing against left-handed pitching, but once we started playing against righties when Carlos Gonzalez was traded, his OPS took a real dive when he was playing every day. It dropped down to 782, still decent numbers, but not quite what he was doing before the trade deadline. And man, Buster Posey, he was ice cold in September. 756 OPS is what he finished with, not what you want to see from the best overall player on your team. and it's definitely not what you want to see from a guy whose future is probably being the full-time first baseman at some point if we decide to bring him back next year, because this upcoming season is the last year of his contract, and it will come down, if I bring him back, will come down to how much he wants and how he performs in 2021. If he has another year like that, and he still wants like $13-14 million, goodbye Buster Posey. I think you deserve to retire as a Giant, but I am not going to bring you back just because some nostalgia factor or some loyalty factor. So Buster Posey, if he doesn't perform well and he still wants a ton of money next year, I mean, even if he wants a ton of money and he does perform well, I'm probably not going to bring him back. So it really just depends on how much he wants next year. So if he still wants like over $10 million next year, which he's probably going to, because he's probably still going to be like an 88 overall, Buster Posey might not be back on the team for 2022 and in the future. Nelson Cruz didn't really hit that well. He was an experiment to play at first base just to get us through the rest of the season. Didn't really work out, not really a big deal. We weren't trying to win or anything. Franklin Barreto had a 688 OPS. He struggled in the second half. He still hit 13 home runs and swiped 23 bags, which is the leader on the team and also among the league leaders in the National League. And he'll still only 25 years old next season, so sometimes it takes players a few years to really put it together. So hopefully Franklin Barreto's one of those guys, and next year he can actually have maybe a mid 700. Like if he had Buster Posey's OPS, I would be okay with that. I would actually be impressed by that. But Buster Posey, I don't want Buster Posey to have that type of OPS. Stuart Fairchild, the guy we got at the trade deadline from the Reds, finished the year with a 670 OPS over 145 ABs. Not the biggest sample size, not the greatest numbers. He's still going to get plenty of more chances at the big league level for us, though. Brandon Crawford is just not a good hitter anymore. He's still incredible on defense. I mean, he was at least okay at the plate in the second half. In the first half, he was awful. I mean, I think like 2 months into the season, he still had like a 400 OPS, which is just absurd. But next year is the last year in his contract, so after next season, he will be on a different team if he doesn't retire. Evan Longoria, he's just flat out bad. There's nothing good at all about Evan Longoria anymore. We have him for next year plus another year after that on the contract. We're going to talk a bit more about him later on in the episode. Luke Maile was a guy we signed to be our backup catcher this year. I expected him to be awful at the plate, and he was. It's just his defense was not impressive enough for me to overlook the fact that he's a complete liability offensively. So I doubt he's back for next season. Jacoby Jones, similar to Luke Maile, but better defensively, at least to me. Jacoby Jones, absolutely incredible defensive player. The guy is just an insane center fielder. But just like Maile, he is a complete liability at the plate. We do have him for multiple more years of team control, so he'll probably be back for next season, but he'll be back as depth, not our starting center fielder like he basically was for this season. Now onto the pitching side of things, we've got Johnny Cueto, who was the best pitcher on our team this year. 4.5 WAR, a 2.85 ERA, 3.27 FIP over 208 and 2/3 innings pitched. He actually had the 6th best ERA in the National League. The guy can still pitch. Johnny Baseball still got it. Next year's the last year in his deal, so hopefully he could get another good season and then just, either ride off in the sunset and retire or, just go get paid somewhere else because we're not bringing him back next season. Or we are for next season, but for 2022, we're not going to be bringing him back. Derek Rodriguez had a down year, a 4.33 ERA, 3.96 ERA over 185 innings pitched. Still decent, but definitely not good, definitely not what you want from your ace. Tyler Anderson, not quite what he did with Colorado in 2019, a 3.40 ERA, 4.07 FIP, still decent numbers. He's signed for one more year, and then hopefully when he's gone, our young guys are ready to take over in 2022, because in 2022, right now, as I'm saying this for right now, before free agency, before re-signing, the only people we have signed for 2022 are our rookies and Derek Rodriguez. So right now we've got basically Derek Rodriguez, Sean Anderson, and then just a bunch of rookies fighting spots out for 2022. Because Cueto will be gone, so will Anderson. So 2022 and forward, the rotation, no idea what that will look like. But hopefully Tyler Anderson is able to have a decent year and fill that stopgap that he is. Jeff Samardzija was okay. His second half was at least serviceable as opposed to his first half, which was pretty awful. This is the last year of his contract, though, so he is gone heading into the offseason. Tanner Scott in the bullpen, not the greatest numbers, but he struck out a lot of batters as our Rule 5 draft selection. He struck out 91 guys over 71 and 2/3 innings pitched. Hopefully he can figure out his walks issue and lower his FIP a bit because I do expect him to be a pretty decent member of our bullpen for years to come. Brandon Finnegan actually had a decent year in the bullpen for us, a 3.99 ERA and 3.58 FIP with 72 strikeouts over 65 in the third innings pitched. His first full season in the big league since 2016, as he was hurt in 2017. 2018 performed poorly like the first month and then got sent down, never came back up. 2019 he spent with the Reds, not doing anything in the minor leagues, and then we pick him up for 2020 and he does that. So not a bad year by all purposes if you're a guy who's been in the minor leagues for a bunch of the past few seasons, trying to make your way back to the big leagues. And he still does have multiple years of team control, so he will be back next season. It's just, I'm not really sure if he's going to have another big league role for us, or if he's more of like a depth player. Tyler Beede had a 3.78 ERA, which was very misleading because his FIP was actually 5.33. So Tyler Beede, not the greatest year, didn't strike out a lot of batters despite having a blazing fastball and a big curveball. Not really sure what his deal is, because you would think he has the stuff to be a decent reliever, but he just hasn't really proven that so far. Andrew Suarez put up decent numbers over his 59 2/3 innings pitched. We're going to talk more about him later. He's probably still going to be traded. Trevor Gott actually had a pretty decent year in the pen for us, a 3.30 ERA, 3.44 FIP over 57 1/3 innings pitched. Still have him for plenty more years of team control, so expect to see plenty more Trevor Gott in our bullpen. Probably not quite as big of a role as he had in the bullpen this year. He's probably more of just like a fifth, sixth inning guy, a middle relief type pitcher on like an actual good bullpen. And then Reyes Moronta has become a great pitcher ratings-wise. He strikes out a lot of batters. I want to see him lower his FIP quite a bit and also cut down his walk rate till he's really proving that he is quite a really good pitcher. But one thing's for sure, he does have a great hit per nine, strikeout per nine. He throws the ball hard. He has wipeout stuff. It's just he walks way too many people and sometimes gets himself into a bit of trouble because of that. And then Sean Anderson was actually pretty good in the second half of the season, a 2.78 ERA. Bit misleading, though, over his 45 innings pitched, because he did have a 4.17 FIP, which is still decent, but not quite 2.78 level. I am, though, very intrigued on what Sean Anderson could do in a full season as a part of the big league rotation. And then Carter Capps, just really not good numbers. His stuff is very impressive. He throws very hard. He's basically got similar stuff from Moronta, where he throws up to 100 miles an hour. He's got a wipeout slider. He just hasn't really been able to put it together for us, but this is his first season back in the big league, sort of like Finnegan in quite a while. So maybe next year, because he is under team control for at least one more season, maybe next year he'll be able to really put it together and have a pretty good year for us. Now let's take a look around the league at some of the league leaders in the National League in home runs. Paul Goldschmidt led the National League in home runs. In batter war, you've got Goldschmidt once again, followed by guys like Chris Taylor, Travis Shaw, Anthony Rizzo, and Brandon Nimmo. And then the pitchers with war, you've got DeGrom, Severino, Scherzer, Quintana, Walker Buehler. In the American League for home runs, you got Jose Ramirez, Gary Sanchez, Ryan O'Hearn making an appearance, guy who never really got an opportunity in my Royals franchise, but he's been pretty good for this universe's Royals. And now taking a look at wins, purely because Shane Bieber won 20 games with Cleveland. I personally literally don't give a shit at all about wins, but it is still cool to see a guy with 20 wins on his record. And then among the war leaders for the batters, you've got, of course, Mike Trout. And then for the pitchers, you got guys like Garrett Cole, Chris Sale, Kluber, Carrasco, Paxton. And then number 6, Mike Minor, having a pretty damn good year with the Texas Rangers. Pretty surprising guy to be up towards the top of that list. As for the award winners in both leagues, the National League MVP was Paul Goldschmidt of the St. Louis Cardinals. The National League Cy Young winner was Max Scherzer. The reliever of the year was Kenley Jansen. The rookie of the year beating out Tetsuto Yamato was Ronald Butler, outfielder from the Miami Marlins. He is a very good player. He's one of those guys that gets drafted. He was like a blue chip prospect, and then he was with their big league team the entire season. And then Carlos Gonzalez spent the first half of the season with us, second half of the season with Atlanta, ended up winning the Gold Glove in right field. In the American League, the MVP was Jose Ramirez of Cleveland. The Cy Young winner was Garrett Cole. The reliever, Joe Smith. Not really sure how the Astros had that bad of a season, considering they were peppered all around the league leaders and the award winners, but they did not have the greatest season. The Rookie of the Year was Vlad Jr., already insane ratings, and he's already getting paid $10 million because I guess the AI saw what his ratings were in the OSFM rosters, and they said, this is a guy who needs to be making $10 million, and they gave him $10 million in his rookie season. And then it is worth noting that Luke Voigt, my guy, the man who wears a jersey 3 sizes too small to show off the guns, wins the Gold Glove at first base. That's what I'm talking about. And then continuing his dominance of the Gold Glove in right field in the American League is Mookie Betts. And now that we've gone around the league at the league leaders and the award winners, the final playoff bracket looks something like this. The Yankees win the World Series in 6 games over the St. Louis Cardinals. And as far as the award winners in the playoffs go, the World Series MVP was the Yankees' midseason acquisition in Alberto Mondesi, of all people. Did not have the greatest year in the regular season, but he did do enough in the World Series to win that World Series MVP. And the AL playoff MVP was Gleyber Torres of the Yankees, and the National League playoff MVP was Marcell Ozuna of the Cardinals. Now, as far as retirements go, we only had one retirement. It wasn't even really that big of a thing because it's Mike Fiers. He was in AAA for us. We got him purely as a guy to make the money even in the Mark Melancon trade. Never even played in the big leagues for us, so Mike Fiers, he's gone. Who gives a shit? We do have a couple other retirements to go over, though, as Juan Pineda, 23 years old, Houston Astros prospect, retired due to injury. What is that injury, you say? It must be significant for a guy to retire in the year of 2020, where modern medicine is a thing. Oh, it's a dislocated ankle? Ah, okay. And then you've also got Dexter Fowler, who technically retired due to an injury, a torn MCL, but let's be honest here, it's really due to his age and his ability because he's just not a good player in this game. In real life, I know he's having sort of a resurgence year, but not in this universe. And then among the guys who were in free agency and retired because they were old and just there's no reason to go in free agency again, you've got Todd Frazier, my king. The pride of Toms River, New Jersey, has called it an end to his career. Todd Frazier will be missed. And then to cap things all off, you had one player go into the Hall of Fame, and that was Robinson Cano. And before we actually move on to moves made in the offseason, I do just want to mention that Bruce Bochy still has not retired, so he will still be the manager, as well as the rest of the staff remains the same as well. Now, moving on to the re-signs. Important players that we brought back. Now, I'm not going to go through literally every single player that we re-signed. It's safe to assume that if someone was a member of our organization, they weren't up for free agency, or they weren't old, they were probably brought back. I'm going to go over guys who were significant that we let walk. I'm not going to go through and show every $80,000 contract that we offered to every single minor leaguer because that would take forever, but here are the notables. So Robbie Grossman has been brought back on a 1-year, $1.8 million deal. He's probably not going to be an everyday player for us with so many young guys getting more chances here in this season, but he's still definitely going to be getting a decent amount of time for us with the Major League team. Carter Cap still has team control, so I figured, hey, might as well bring him back even though he didn't have the greatest year. $1.5 million over 1 year. He'll be in our bullpen again, probably. Brandon Finnegan got $1.5 million through arbitration as he won his case. They sided with him. And then Jacoby Jones also won his case. He got $2.1 million through arbitration. Definitely more than I would have liked to see him get. He wanted even more if I was just to offer him a contract and avoid arbitration. So I figured, hey, take my chances on arbitration. Obviously didn't work out for me. He is just depth, though. He's not going to be starting for us. And plus, even if he causes a logjam in the outfield, I could always just trade him to some desperate team or just not play him and just let him walk next offseason. And then Ray Black is a guy who I still just cannot quite give up on the 101 mile an hour fastball that he has. So Ray Black is back yet again to be in AAA. Now, as far as who we let walk, notables that we let walk, guys who were just immediately going to be available as free agents, Jeff Samardzija, not brought back, that was predictable. Garcia, not brought back. I mean, I could have brought him back to be a utility guy again, but I just decided not to. We're going for more youth this year. If he's not on the team, that's another spot for another young guy, so he is not brought back. Nelson Cruz, very obviously, that's very predictable. And then guys who were available for arbitration, or just guys who weren't even to arbitration yet that I did not bring back. Luke Maile was not that impressed by his defense to overlook his bat. Aramis Garcia wasn't really anything that I'd really blown away by. So we're going to need some new minor league catchers throughout the system. And then you've also got Andrew Applin, who is just I think he's a 30-year-old outfielder at this point, who's just depth. He was not brought back because if I did, it would just create a huge logjam in the outfield. And Connor Gillespie was let walk as well, the first baseman. Now on to free agency. On your screen right now, you were seeing the best free agents available. Just scroll by, and I'm sure you noticed on that list, there's a guy by the name of Mookie Betts. I really did think about offering Mookie Betts. I really did. It's not usually my style to go out there and offer these insanely good players contracts, these insanely huge contracts, and then just kind of be locked down very, very long term to a guy. Not usually what I do in my franchises, but I mean, Mookie Betts he's still 28. He's just so incredibly good. We have corner outfielder locked down with some prospects, but I don't really have center field quite locked down by anybody, so I figured, hey, Mookie Betts could very easily take over in center field for us, but I decided not to offer him. I saw what people were offering him, and I was like, I'm not gonna do it. And then, despite him getting these types of offers from other teams, he takes this offer from the Mets. What is up with that? He literally took less money from the Mets than they were originally offering him. I mean, if I knew that he was going to accept the contract just under $20 million a year, I would have 1,000% offered him a contract. But, hey, I guess you live and you learn. I was also very interested in Delano DeShields because he's very fast and he's very good defensively, but I ultimately decided that I did not want another offensive liability in center field, so we did not bring him onto our team. We did make the biggest signing so far the Giants franchise, though, and that is Jock Peterson. The former Los Angeles Dodger will be staying in the National League West as a member of their rival. He has been signed for $19 million over the next 2 seasons. He will be platooning in left field because he can't hit against lefties, so there's no use playing him against lefties. But he is very good against right-handed pitching, and he has incredible plate discipline, and he's good enough to play in left field with a very accurate arm as well. So Jock Peterson is going to be a member of our team for at least the next 2 seasons. We also went out and signed a left-handed reliever in Tyler Lyons at $2.8 million over 1 year. Left-handed reliever, dominant against lefties, mainly going to be using him against lefties, but he's also going to have a pretty decent role in our bullpen. He had a great year with the Pirates in 2020, so we're hoping we can replicate that in our bullpen this year in 2021. I also tried to lowball Ken Giles, sort of like I did with Jock Peterson. I offered him a decent contract, and then I was literally simming day by day. I would sim one day, check my offers, make sure I was still the top offer, sim one day, check the offers, make sure I was still the top offer. I would do that every single day. I was the only offer the entire time. And then one day, I sim, and he magically signs with Tampa Bay, who didn't even have an offer when I looked before I simmed that day. So, no idea how that happened, but he ended up signing for way less money than I was offering him, but more years with the Rays, so he goes to Tampa Bay. And then once the next crop of free agents became available, guys who were not offered arbitration by their original teams, we signed a couple other players. Aaron Altair, a $1.5 million 1-year contract. The former Philadelphia Philly, he spent last season with the Pirates. The plan is to play him in center field. I think he's good enough defensively, plus he has good enough speed to play center field, and I also think that his hitting ratings and his good discipline could translate into being also a very good bat in our lineup. And then when I missed out on Ken Giles, I did want to get another reliever, but the thing was the only relievers left were guys who were like 35 plus years old. I did not want to sign anybody who was just going to be garbage like a month into the season because that's how age regression works in this game. So we went and signed Felix Pena to a $650,000 deal for 1 year. He's been a starter throughout his career, but we are signing him to move him to the bullpen. I think he has good enough stuff to be a reliever, so that is the plan for Felix Pena. We also made one more signing, and that was Shane Peterson. He is a first baseman / corner outfielder. 100% not a thing that we need in our organization, but he was available, so I figured, hey, fuck it, let's just sign him. He will be in AAA for us. He is a guy who has a great bat, great plate discipline. I remember seeing in the minor league update video when I was scrolling through the league leaders and stats towards the end of the season, the minor league season, that he actually led the PCL and OPS. So he is an interesting guy who could get some time in the major leagues. He is still 33 years old, and he's not that great defensively, so he is still limited on what he can do in our organization. But I figured, hey, he's great in AAA, might as well try to get him on our team. We also made another selection in the Rule 5 draft this year, Alex Meyer. Not a typical Rule 5 selection, he's 31 years old. He was once a highly touted prospect for the Twins, hasn't really panned out. He did not pitch in the big leagues in 2020 or 2019, and he has the ability to strike out a lot of batters, but he has some serious walk issues. So the plan for him is to try him out in spring training. If he's impressive, he makes the team. If he sucks, he gets released, or he gets sent back to the Los Angeles Angels. If they don't want him back, then he'll just get released. Now let's take a look at some of the free agents who signed around the league. Phillies made some big moves with some relievers. Andrew Miller signed a 1-year deal with them, as well as Daniel Winkler signed a 6-year deal. He's a well-rated reliever. He's 31 years old, coming off an okay season, but they gave him 6 years. Not really sure what that's about, so Daniel Winkler going to be with the Phillies for a long time. Brad Hand, also 31-year-old, well-rated reliever, gave him a 6-year deal with Cincinnati, coming off a bad season. So not really sure what's up with that either. Cincinnati now has Brad Hand for a very long time. Kirby Yates, though, is now on Cleveland. He is a 34-year-old reliever, but he is coming off a very good season. They signed him to a 2-year deal. There was also DJ LeMahieu signed with the Dodgers, Brad Peacock signed with the Yankees, Michael Brantley signed with the Rockies, Danny Salazar went to the Milwaukee Brewers, Aaron Sanchez stays in division with the Boston Red Sox, Yoenis Cespedes goes to the Central with the Kansas City Royals, and Chris with a K Davis goes to the Houston Astros, which is significant because Houston made a pretty big trade. AI trade alert, sound the alarms. The Houston Astros sent Brandon Belt, Will Harris, and catcher BJ Lopez to the Philadelphia Phillies, and in return, they got Andrew McCutchen. You would think that Brandon Belt has more value than Andrew McCutchen at this point in their careers, but based on who gave up more in the deal, I guess that's not the case. So Andrew McCutchen now on the Astros, Belt, Harris, and BJ Lopez, who I'm sure is just like a throw-in catcher, are now on the Philadelphia Phillies. Jared Kelenic has been traded yet again. He was in real life the guy that the Mets sent to the Mariners in that Robbie Cano and Edwin Diaz trade. He was the main piece in that. And the Mariners have now traded him to the Chicago White Sox in return for Greg Lyons, which I'm sure isn't really the most insane thing. You never really know how prospects are going to pan out. Maybe he's not even that good. We are going to be entering the 2021 season, so this is not real life 2019 Jared Kelenic. This is video game universe, multiple years in the future, Jared Kelenic. Rougned Odor was actually traded to a contender. This trade actually makes sense to me. The Rangers are a rebuilding team. They don't need Odor's contract. The Cubs obviously are a contending team. And the Rangers in return get Adbert Alzolay, who is a Major League-ready starting pitcher, and also outfield prospect Brennan Davis, who I don't know much about, but I'm sure he's at least a decent prospect. The Detroit Tigers also made a trade with the Boston Red Sox, as Beau Burrows has been sent to the Boston Red Sox. The Tigers get 3 players in return. I don't know much about Burrows or the 3 guys that the Red Sox sent over, so I can't really critique this trade. And then the last trade to go over, Tim Anderson was actually traded to the Los Angeles Angels in return for Griffin Canning, a pitching prospect, I believe. The Angels did re-sign Andrelton Simmons, so I'm not really sure where Tim Anderson's going to play. I would assume he's either going to play second or third for them, but he is now on the Angels. Now that's it for the AI trades. We did make a couple trades of our own that we need to go over. The first one, Andrew Suarez. I understand that Suarez's in-game trade value is way higher than it would be if this was real life, because a minor league starting pitcher does not have the greatest value in real life, but a 79 overall pitcher still does in this game. So I could have traded him to any team and gotten a really good prospect in return, but I decided not to just go and straight cheese a CPU team. So instead, we got what I thought was a pretty realistic deal. The St. Louis Cardinals, who don't particularly need starting pitching, but they could use like a 5th starter, get Andrew Suarez, and we in return get a shortstop prospect in Edmundo Sosa. Bit of an older prospect, he's 25 years old, very good defensively, needs work offensively. He will be in spring training with us. I'm not sure if he's ever going to have a long-term role in the major leagues for us, or even if he's going to be in the major leagues this season. But what I do know is that Andrew Suarez was not a guy that I wanted on my major league team, and he was just kind of blocking prospects that we had in our organization. The other trade that we made was Connor Joe. He's pretty much just a 4A player, so we traded him for a 4A player to the San Diego Padres, and we get Seth Mejias Breen in return. He is a 29-year-old first baseman, can play a bit of third base as well. He's got a good bat, good discipline, good fielder. He's a first baseman, he's 29 years old, almost 30 obviously. Not really a need for us at first base, but I mean, hey, I liked his ratings. Who knows, he could force his way into our plan as like a guy who comes up to the big leagues at 30 years old or something. He's not currently on the 40-man roster, but I mean, Connor Joe wasn't a guy who was really a part of our long-term plans anymore either, so we just kind of swapped 4A player for 4A player. And now the last thing that we need to go over is Evan Longoria. Now I really did try to find a trade that made sense. I truly sat down for quite a decent amount of time and looked through teams. I just could not find something that made sense to me. There really aren't that many bad deals left around the league. I mean, Chris Davis isn't even with the Orioles anymore because they either released him or his contract ran up. I'm not really sure which one. And a lot of the other ones that are left only have 1 year left on their deal, while Evan Longoria has 2 years left on his deal. Some of the main guys around the league, there were Alex Cobb with Baltimore, Lance Lynn with Texas, and Ian Desmond with Colorado were the main three. But all three of those guys only have 1 year left on their deal, so I personally don't see why any of those teams would take on one bad contract that they're free of after this season just to get a different bad contract for another season of a bad contract. And then for Lance Lynn, he's actually been really good for the Rangers somehow, so they definitely wouldn't do that, plus try to get a bad player for their productive player. So instead with Longoria, what I did was I noticed that this year he's slated to make $17.8 million, and next year he's slated to make $20 million. If we released him, we would only have to pay $13.3 of this year and $7.5 million of next year, so I figured, hey, the rest of our bad contracts are up at the end of this season. He would only have to be making $7 million for us the next season. Why not just bite the bullet, get rid of Longoria, get him off the roster, and just open up another spot on the Major League roster for a young guy to fill and take over. So that is what we did. Evan Longoria has been released. His tenure with the San Francisco Giants has come to an end, as well as this video is now coming to an end. As that wraps things up, the next episode will be the spring training episode with some guys fighting for certain jobs at certain positions, also getting looks at other guys. And then once that episode comes out, the next episode will be kicking off the 2021 regular season. I've been your host, Jerseyborn, and I am saying, my brain is fried, I have nothing clever to say.